I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. What a wonderful conversation. My guest, I'm presenting them as co-host today, Dean Burnell Powell, Emeritus, former Dean of the Law School at University of Missouri, Kansas City, and also at the University of South Carolina, and the esteemed Yusef Mgini, educator, organizer, broadcast and media personality, civics leader in St. Paul. And momentarily, we're going to be joined by U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar. Gentlemen, I want you to feel free to join me in engaging her in a conversation about the topics of the day. Of course, we want to hear her take on what's happening with the decision by President Joe Biden to not seek re-election and his decision to endorse his Vice President, Kamala Harris, as the Democratic Party's nominee for the office of president. Interested too in her take on background on the machinations that went into this set of decisions that really, as I described earlier, had been tumultuous decisions in the party in the past 90 hours, 96 hours or so, 2 weeks at the outside. And interested in her thoughts, and Burnell, you and Yusef, your thoughts on who would likely be great candidates for vice president for Kamala Harris, and why, and how she probably will approach the decisions to do that. Representative Omar, thank you for being here. How are you?
I am wonderful. It's good to be with you, sir.
Well, good to be with you again. I'm just wondering how this whole scenario looks to you in the seat that you're in as a representative, as part of the Minnesota delegation, which I believe pretty much has supported President Biden's decision to, one, not seek re-election, but two, endorse Vice President Kamala Harris. What are your thoughts? And how is this whole thing unfolding to you personally, Representative Ilhan Omar?
Well, I know that it was, it's been a really incredibly couple of difficult weeks, not just for the president, but all of us here in Washington being hammered by the media on what the president should do. I always felt as if the decision was his and his alone to make, and didn't think that it was respectful of our president for people to join the chorus in the level of harassment that we were seeing from some of my colleagues. And he did ultimately make the right decision for the country, for the party, for us going forward. I appreciate the fact that he did endorse Vice President Harris in his statement to drop out of the race. I think that was probably what generated the kind of momentum and the coalescing around her candidacy that we are seeing today. I could not have imagined, if he didn't do that, the kind of challenges that she would have faced, and the hurdles that the party would have had to overcome in deciding who would ultimately be our nominee when we have just little over 100 days to go and a couple of weeks out of before a decision is made at the DNC. So, right now we're sitting pretty. The vice president has raised $240 million within 24 hours. I was able to join a call that was put together by Black women leaders. We were, I think, expecting maybe 1,000. And we had about 44,000. That call started a little before 9 p.m. On the East Coast, and it went past midnight. I think I got off around like 12:45 and went to sleep. And last night, the same happened for Black men, and I think they had similar expectations, and they ultimately had about 40,000. And in both of those calls, we were able to raise over $1 million in each. So there is great momentum. And I was just reading that the vice president right now has 95% of Democrats supporting her. On election day, Hillary Clinton had about 90%. So there is great momentum. We have to keep going. And I do hope that she picks a VP candidate that does not drag down her momentum. That helps.
Who do you think that might be? Who'd you recommend if she asked you for your estimate or evaluation?
I mean, I think there are some really good candidates out there that have some pull. A lot of people are talking about Andy Bashir of Kentucky. I think he does bring a contrast and is going to be able to take on JD Vance on the debate stage and in the rallies. Someone else that's being talked about is our own Governor Tim Walz. He's a veteran, he's a former teacher, a coach, someone who has had a great record of accomplishing things with a slim majority. There are others that are being talked about that I'm a little worried about. Mark Kelly, I'm worried that we will lose that Senate seat and there might not be enough time for us to win back his seat in Arizona with a replacement. Another one that's being talked about is Shapiro out of Pennsylvania. I think we lose the chance of having that state be represented by a Democrat. His lieutenant is not someone that people are excited to have represent them. So that's kind of my early assessment of what some of the field looks like. But she needs somebody who has a track record of winning a tough state and is able to bring new base with her.
Representative
and not lose the enthusiasm and the excitement that her base currently has.
The progressive young community is questioning the Biden-Harris, I'll say Biden policy on Palestine in particular. And you've been one of the outspoken leaders about looking at what equity, equality, justice, and fairness mean in resolving the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. How do you see Vice President Harris's campaign threading the needle, driving towards a different or a strategy that will broaden consensus to bring young people in while not losing people that have a sort of traditional view of supporting Israel no matter what? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that she does distance herself from the current policies of the administration. We are hearing that in rooms that she actually was pretty critical in the path that the president and our Secretary of State have chosen. So I do hope that she calls for a ceasefire, that the impunity that Israel has enjoyed, that we've provided for them in the international community ends, and that there is a pause in sending weapons to continue the genocide that's currently being carried out against the people of Gaza. And we're hearing initial changes. She's deciding not to preside over the joint statement, joint address tomorrow here in Congress, so she would not appear behind him. She is set to have a meeting with him where some of her aides have said that she will talk to him about ending the war. So I do hope that the readout from that meeting is something that creates hope of the kind of presidency that she will have.
Let me introduce you to Dean Burnell Powell, who is former dean of the law school at South Carolina and Kansas City. And I think you know Yusef and Jeannie. I'm sure you must know Yusef.
Good afternoon.
Gentlemen, if either of you have a question or comment, I'm sure.
Representative Omar.
Go ahead.
Would you describe the tone of your primary campaign, and if successful, what do you expect the tone will be of the campaign in the general election?
Yeah, I mean, we're running a joyful campaign as we always do. Our opponent has chosen hateful, sexist rhetoric to campaign against me, and I think that's unbecoming. We enjoy a really good base of support in the district. And we know that once we are successful in reminding people that there is a primary, that we prevail, and we prevail really well. We did that in 2018. We did that in 2020 when we had millions of money being spent against us. In 2022, we did not take him seriously and didn't do a lot of work in reminding folks that we did have a primary, and he did get close to winning that election. And this time we are doing what we've always done and treating 2022 as an outlier. And making sure all of our focus is reminding everybody that we represent that there is a primary happening on the 13th of August. Early voting is going on, and there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm. Many people have already voted early, and many people have already requested their ballots, including myself. And my kids, who did get the chance to vote for me for the first time this year.
And what do you anticipate in the general election campaign?
Yeah, I mean, in 2020, we were successful in defeating Trump, and I do believe that we will do everything that we can. The 5th is a vote generator for the Democrats in Minnesota, and so I'm not taking the fact that people are considering Minnesota a purple state this cycle lightly, and so we are already thinking about the resources that we're going to need and collaborating with my friend, the chair of the DFL, Kamala.
I have a couple of observations. The first one that I would make would be that I think that your handicapping of the possible vice presidential nominee is right on. I'm particularly struck by your reference to Mark Kelly. You indicated that there might be some real risk of losing that seat in the Senate. I'm not sure what the process would be for replacing him if he were to declare as the vice presidential nominee. But I do know that Arizona is a tough state, and he won there because he was particularly suited to win in that.
Yeah, he's a very unique candidate, yes.
Yeah, jurisdiction. The other thing that I would note is that with respect to the prime minister from Israel, Netanyahu, he's here, and I think it should be underlined. He's here because the Republican Party saw it to their advantage to have him here. He's not here because the Biden administration wanted him here. The Biden administration indeed has been at odds with Netanyahu for the entirety of their tenure, and the disagreements between Biden and Netanyahu far exceed his time as president. The third thing that I would note, though, is with all due respect, one of the reasons why I am in academia is because it's one of the few places where I can really make the point that my responsibility is to tell the truth as I see it and to read the law and interpret it as I see it. And that's without political favorites. And so, with all due respect, Representative, when you use such phrases as the genocide that's going on in Palestine, I have to say to you, I do not believe that there is any jurisdiction in the world that would declare that what Israel has done, as horrific as it has been, amounts to genocide. And I think that we should not take legal terms and use them as part of a popular conversation. It simply creates a misunderstanding of what the law is, and we ought to, at all times, insist upon clarity and be specific about what it is that we are talking about. And that is
how would you define it, Bernal?
So I appreciate that.
Say that I do not agree that Israel has engaged in activities that should be investigated as potential war crimes. Yes.
So let's have
I appreciate that. If I can just respond, sure. Professor, and I do think that if history serves me well, I remember the Rwandan genocide taking place, and a lot of professors, a lot of people in the State Department, Albright herself, the President Clinton, all of them saying that it could not be categorized as a genocide. The same happened when the Bosnian genocide was taking place, that now everybody understands as the genocide. There's a long debate when genocides are taking place of people saying that that's not what it is, because it is a political term that in itself requires people to take action once that term is used. Nobody wants to be complicit and helping support that. So you and I can debate. Others certainly disagree with you, who study genocides and who diagnose it. And I will take their word that there is genocide currently.
Well, it would be helpful if you would identify who some of those others are who have taken the position that what we're witnessing is genocide. I know that there are
the UN rapporteur for Palestine has.
And judicial bodies and commentators who have talked about the need for a different approach. But we should not take a legal term and turn it into popular barbershop or hairdresser conversation. That's not advanced.
But the way that the magnitude of a genocide is not something that you use to dress up anything, sir.
So let me move the conversation. This is a great conversation. Thank you, Dean Powell, for that, and thank you, Ilhan Omar, for your response as well, and Yusef for yours as well. Ilhan, before we close, I wanted you to spend some time talking about what you have delivered to your constituents here in Minnesota. You've got a campaign that I think is a serious campaign against you, and part of the story will be that you have not, or they'll question what you have delivered. I wanted you to take the time to talk about why voters should reelect you. What are you telling? What are you presenting to the electorate regarding your candidacy?
Yeah, really proud of the work that we've been able to do in the few terms that we've been in Congress. You know, we've delivered $54 million in project community funding that has touched the lives of our community members across the district. We were able to pass the Meals Act that helped feed 33 million children across the country during COVID. We worked with the administration to get the Inflation Reduction Act passed that has the most historic climate investment in the history of this country. We were able to get our zero waste legislation passed in the infrastructure bill that passed. And I think we still have some more work to do in regards to protecting reproductive rights, making sure that we are protecting our democracy and expanding voting rights. There's still a lot more work to do outside of the bipartisan gun violence bill that we passed to address gun violence in our country. And I certainly look forward to passing the Meals Act to make it permanent in the form of the universal school meals legislation that I've introduced.
What's the sense of your campaign of the readiness of voters to turn out? The big question has always been voter apathy, but we've got a hot contest that's simply heating up by the minute because of the dynamics of both who the candidate is on the Republican side and the transition taking place on the Democratic Party side. How does that translate to activating, motivating voter turnout in Minnesota, and particularly in our communities? I'm talking about Black, brown, Native American communities. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there is actually an increase in enthusiasm. Last night, we did our own Minnesota call of Black women. And that was put together within a couple of hours. And there were so many of us, not just elected Black women in the state, but organizers. Everybody's ready to go. We've seen an uptick, a huge uptick in people signing up for volunteer shifts. The DFL had their biggest fundraising haul There's just a lot of energy that is mounting. Many of us, I think all of the Democratic electeds in Minnesota just put out a statement supporting Harris. There's a lot of energy and a renewed hope that we not only can Minnesota defeat Trump, but that we can also defeat him in the country.
Okay, Yusef?
Representative Omar, the largest law enforcement organization in the state of California, with 40 million people, are the corrections officers in the California state prisons and correctional facilities. One of the criticisms that the Republicans are raising about Vice President Harris is that she created quite a bit of job security for that particular union in sending a lot of young men up the river in her role as district attorney and as attorney general. Do you believe that this is an obstacle that she will have to overcome as part of her campaign, and that she is capable of doing that successfully?
I think so. I believe that that's going to be a talking point that the Republicans will quickly drop. I don't think, being the Republican Party, that you can go after a Democratic candidate and saying that they were tough.
Too tough on crime.
Too tough on crime. I think that that's not going to be a bigger obstacle. I think they will lean heavily on the racism and sexism, and that's going to be, I think, the bigger challenge for the Democrats to learn how to defend a Black woman on top of the ticket.
Dean Powell, final question and comment.
What do you have to say about the impact of the infrastructure legislation? How has that affected Minnesota? What has it meant in terms of jobs? What has it meant in terms of building repair?
Economic.
Yeah, it will bring 10,000 jobs every year for the next 10 years. So that's going to be a huge deal. Many of those jobs are going to be union jobs, which means that they're going to be good paying, protected jobs. And many of them are going to be green jobs, meaning that they're going to be impactful in regards to addressing the climate crisis. And, we've been doing a lot of work in Minnesota, as Al knows, in trying to make sure that there are quotas set up for a lot of these companies to make sure that they are hiring people of color, especially Black men.
We got about a minute left, Ilhan. I'll give that minute to you to remind and invite and encourage voters to do their duty, to show up, and to also talk about the value that you want to bring, continue to bring to our state.
Yeah, our vote is our voice. People wouldn't work so hard to disenfranchise it if it wasn't powerful. And I try to remind people that politics is personal. In this election, we're fighting against Project 2025. The Republicans are serious about dismantling and eliminating a lot of the rights, the civil liberties that many of us enjoy. It is going to be dramatic for anyone that is a woman, anyone that is a person of color, anyone that is an immigrant, to have another Trump administration. So we must do all that we can to vote ourselves, to get our friends to vote, to contribute in any way that we can. This is our country. This is our democracy. This is our republic to save. And we do not want to wake up on November 6th upset about the fact that we didn't do everything that we can to protect our country.
Ilhan Omar, thank you so much for being here. Continued success and good luck in your campaign. My gratitude and thanks to Dean Burnell Powell and to Ndugu Yusef Mjini, reminding you that we want, if you're interested in winning a pair of Minnesota Twins baseball tickets, subscribe to Insight News and go to Insight News MN on YouTube. Leave a comment about this conversation, but start the comment with the word baseball, and we're going to give away 10 pairs of tickets to the Minnesota Twins baseball games, an August game that you can choose. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thank you.
Stay safe, brothers.